The sequence of video that you're about to see is disturbing, but the man that you will see being attacked, he survived. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrii has accused Russia of committing a war crime after a video was released showing a drone chasing down and wounding a street vendor in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson. A footage released by Ukrainian police shows the drone pursuing an unidentified man around a van that's being used as a street stand. It explodes, as you see there, after he dives behind the vehicle for cover. Police said the vendor, who is a man in his 50s, survived but suffered shock and shrapnel injuries. Ukrainian police said the incident occurred on Tuesday. Well, joining us now is Kateryna Busol. She's head of the Ukraine program at the International Center for Transitional Justice and associate professor of law at the Kyiv Mohyla Academy. Ms. Busol, it's good to have you with us. Let me just ask you, you saw the video as well. What did we just witness there in legal terms?
Well, we witness, good afternoon. We witness an apparent attack on a civilian. The video does not show any military sites. We could see a minibus around, we could see a regular multi-storied building. But building upon the well-documented practices of Russia of targeting civilians, especially on the right bank of Kherson, we can also say that this is not an isolated incident and not an isolated war crime of a targeting a civilian, but a part of a widespread and systematic policy which allows us to speak about a crime against humanity in legal term. And the UN Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine designated a specific study to Russia's weaponization of drones in Kherson, and they said that the policy, the widespread use of the drones, amounts now to crimes against humanity of murder of targeted civilians.
So, Ms. Busol, there's a lot to unpack there, what you've said. What evidence would investigators need, though, to prove that this was a war crime? And, I mean, based on what we have seen in that video.
The investigators would look at a number of issues. First, they will assess the status of a person targeted, whether it was really a civilian person, whether he or she was engaged with, for instance, carrying certain weapons or being on a military vehicle, which again, in the case of that particular video, did not seem to be so. They would also assess whether any critical military objectives were around that area, which could justify targeting the area. But what we do see in the video, that it was not the area which was targeted, but it was a specific civilian. And again, I would like us to return to the findings of the UN Commission of Inquiry, which also expanded the analysis of such drone attacks. And they said that they pursue a wider objective of A, inflicting terror on civilians in the area, and B, causing the forcible transfer of the population, because people are so afraid of this constant chasing by the drones that inevitably they move out of those areas, even if those areas are not controlled by Russia.
I mean, you bring up a very good point there. And for our viewers, you know, there are many people who have actually never seen a drone. And I'm just wondering, does the way that this drone, the way it follows this man, does that make the operator of the drone, the intent, unusually clear?
Yes, the operators do have the live streamed video from the drone, so they actually see whom they're targeting first. And second, again, referring to the well-established evidence from various human rights groups, Ukraine's prosecution and the UN Commission of Inquiry, Russians then also post the videos, the footage both from the drones, but also the footage of the devastation which they caused to civilians on various social media channels, including Telegram channels. And they accompany those posts by further threats. And the UN Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine has specifically labeled that this posting of harm inflicted on civilians amounts to a separate war crime or in and of itself, of a war crime of outrages upon personal dignity.
Yeah, and we know that people in Kherson describe this attack as, and I'm quoting here, as a human safari. I mean, people are obviously terrified, and that is the point of using drones, right? It's not necessarily to kill someone, it's just to terrify the public.
Absolutely. And drones target not only individuals, they also target ambulances, which arrive to support the civilians who were targeted. Naturally, also, so many hospitals are being targeted by drones and missiles. So the civilians in those areas understand that in a case of the attack, the availability of effective and quick ambulance and wider help is actually very limited. And as you rightly say, that really impacts the decision making of civilians, especially parents and younger Ukrainians, to move from those areas. That, of course, leaves many poorer civilians or elderly civilians or civilians with disabilities in front of an unimaginable choice if they cannot fund the relocation or if it's too complicated for them logistically, which again further exposes them to further violence by the means of the drones.
Yeah, drones are supposed to make warfare more precise and reduce civilian casualties. Has this war, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, has it shown that precision can also make deliberate killing easier?
Absolutely. The drone operators do see whom and what they're targeting, and they have a choice to go after a military target, a military object, or to get after a civilian, which the Russians do.
And how realistic is it to identify the operator behind an individual drone attack?
Well, again, the use of both satellite imagery and the fact that, again, it's a widespread of the Russians to post also both the footage and the analysis of the attacks provides a good body of evidence which helps identify respective units. And as I mentioned, it's crucial that we have moved beyond looking at individual attacks to seeing the actual organized policy of Russia as a state to weaponize the drone warfare against the civilians, not against the military objects.
And then how far can responsibility extend up the chain of command?
Well, under international law, responsibility can go up to the top political and military leadership because the evidence about this use of drones or the mass shelling of major Ukrainian civilian cities like Kyiv or Dnipro is very well documented. And it's not that the information about that is not available to the Russian leadership. And the International Criminal Court specifically has issued several arrest warrants for top Russian generals, saying that they weaponize the indiscriminate shelling of civilian and energy infrastructure to spread a terror amongst the civilians and to inflict immeasurable physical and mental harm on the wide spectrum of, again, Ukrainian civilians, not the military persons.
Let me ask you, before we run out of time, Ukraine also carries out drone attacks, including strikes inside of Russia. Does Ukraine have exactly the same legal duty to investigate allegations against its own forces?
Absolutely. The focus is on survivors and on the proper conduct of warfare. So Ukraine, with every deep strike into Russia, Ukraine also releases a lot of substantiation saying how the strike was targeted specifically against a military object. Unfortunately, during the military operations, certain civilian casualties do happen, and it's important to ensure that this damage is not inflicted or it's not disproportionate compared to the military advantage sought. But again, Ukraine does realize that A, there are rules to the combat of hostilities, and B, that it's under an active duty to prosecute any violations, including those allegedly perpetrated by its forces, which again prompts higher compliance with international humanitarian law, the rules of warfare.
Kateryna Busol, we appreciate your time and your valuable analysis, particularly with this video going public today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.